Have you ever noticed that some of the people who appear the happiest in public are often the ones struggling the most in private? The ones who always smile at gatherings, the ones who make jokes when others feel awkward, the ones who seem so full of life. Yet behind that smile, there's a quiet restlessness, a deep anxiety that gnaws at them when they're alone. Why is that? Why do the brightest faces sometimes carry the heaviest burdens? Krishnamurti once said that the image we create of ourselves becomes a prison. Think about that for a moment. From a young age, we are taught to present ourselves in a certain way, to be strong, to be cheerful, to be successful, and so we begin to wear masks. We learn how to smile when we are hurting. We learn how to say "I'm fine" when our world is collapsing inside. This mask becomes so polished, so convincing, that others admire it. They even envy it. But behind that mask, anxiety is boiling. Because deep down, we know that what we show to the world is not what we truly feel. The paradox is this: the more perfect the mask, the more pressure it creates. The happier we look, the more terrified we become of being exposed. So every laugh, every cheerful gesture, becomes another layer of anxiety. We are no longer living freely. We are performing, and performance is exhausting. Now imagine this cycle. You wake up every morning already rehearsing the role you have to play. You remind yourself, smile, be confident. Don't let them see your doubt. Don't let them see your fear. You go through the day performing, and everyone praises you. They say, "You're always so positive, you're so inspiring." And inside you're dying to scream, "I'm not okay." But you can't, because now you're trapped. If you tell the truth, you fear disappointing them. You fear being rejected. And so the anxiety grows. Krishnamurti's insight cuts right into this. He said that anxiety, fear, and suffering come from division, the division between what we are and what we think we should be. The moment we try to become something, someone happier, stronger, better, we create a gap between our reality and our image. In that gap, anxiety lives. The more we chase the image of happiness, the further we move from actual peace. So those who appear the happiest are often the most anxious, because they are constantly protecting an image of happiness that doesn't match their inner state. Think about social media for a second. We live in a culture where posting a happy picture gets likes, where showing sadness feels like weakness. So we polish our lives for others to see. We show the vacations, the smiles, the celebrations. But how many people post their nights of despair, their panic attacks, their sense of emptiness? Almost none. Yet those moments exist. And because they're hidden, the anxiety grows in silence. What looks like joy is often a carefully edited performance. Here's the deeper truth Krishnamurti pointed to. Real happiness isn't the opposite of sadness. It's not about plastering a smile over pain. Real happiness comes when we no longer need to pretend, when we no longer create an image of who we should be, when we can simply be what we are, sad, uncertain, vulnerable, human. That kind of honesty is the doorway to freedom, and it's a freedom that the mask of happiness can never give us. So the question isn't really, why are the happiest looking people anxious? The real question is, why are we all so afraid of being real? Why do we believe that showing our pain will make us unlovable? Why do we think that to be accepted, we must appear constantly strong? That belief is the seed of anxiety. It tells us, hide your truth, or you won't be worthy. But is that belief actually true? Or is it just another illusion created by fear? When Krishnamurti spoke about fear, he often asked his listeners to simply look at it without trying to escape it. To observe it, not analyze it, not judge it, just see it. Imagine doing that with your anxiety. Instead of covering it with a smile, you sit quietly with it. You let it breathe. You don't call it weakness. You don't push it away. You simply notice it as part of what is. Something strange happens when you do this. The anxiety loses its grip. It may not vanish instantly, but it no longer owns you. You are no longer pretending. You are alive in truth. And that's where real strength lies. Not in smiling through pain, but in being unafraid to show it. Not in hiding behind happiness, but in facing life exactly as it is. When we look at someone who seems endlessly cheerful, it's tempting to believe they've figured life out. But maybe they're not free at all. Maybe they're carrying a secret weight, terrified of silence, terrified of stillness. Because in those moments, their real feelings surface. Laughter becomes their shield. Busyness becomes their escape. And beneath it all, there's a quiet plea. Please don't see me as I really am. That plea is where anxiety grows roots. It thrives in secrecy, in hiding, in the refusal to be seen. Krishnamurti warned us that comparison is another engine of this anxiety. You see others smiling, you think, why am I not like them? You scroll online, you see perfect lives, perfect relationships, perfect bodies, and you feel small. But what if they're comparing themselves to you in the exact same way? What if their happiness is just as fragile, just as painted on? Comparison is a trap because it keeps us chasing shadows. And the more we chase, the more anxious we become. Because no image, no mask can ever satisfy the human heart's need for truth. Let me share something real. Think about a moment when you were deeply, honestly alive. Maybe it wasn't a time of laughter. Maybe it was a quiet walk in the early morning, or a conversation where you finally told someone the truth about your pain, or the simple silence of sitting by yourself without needing to perform. In those moments, there's no mask, no performance. And strangely, even if you were sad, there was a sense of peace. Because peace doesn't come from pretending to be happy. It comes from not pretending at all. This is why so many who look happy in public feel restless when they're alone. They can't stand the mirror. They can't bear the silence, because the silence exposes the truth they've worked so hard to hide. The laughter of the crowd fades, and suddenly the mask falls off. And what's left is fear, loneliness, anxiety. It's like living in two worlds that never meet. The outer world praises you, the inner world consumes you, and the conflict between the two tears you apart. Krishnamurti often asked a radical question: can you live without an image of yourself? Not a happy image, not a sad image, just no image at all. Imagine what that means. No more pretending. No more rehearsing your identity. No more pressure to appear happy when you're not. You are simply yourself, moment to moment. If you're joyful, you're joyful. If you're hurting, you're hurting. If you're uncertain, you admit it. There's nothing to defend, nothing to prove. Do you feel the relief in that idea? That's not weakness. That's freedom. Because when there's no image to protect, there's no anxiety to carry. Of course, this is easier said than done. We've been trained all our lives to perform, to smile when the camera's on, to say we're fine when people ask, to hide our struggles because we think nobody wants to see them. But what if the world doesn't need another smiling mask? What if what the world truly needs is honesty? Imagine how relationships would change if we could all say, "I'm not okay today," without fear of judgment. Imagine the weight that would lift if happiness was no longer a requirement but simply a possibility. That shift would dissolve so much of the silent suffering we carry. Let's not forget that even those who seem the happiest are human. Their smile doesn't make them immune to fear. Their laughter doesn't erase loneliness. And their cheerfulness doesn't mean they sleep peacefully at night. We never truly know what's happening behind closed doors. So instead of envying their happiness, maybe we can approach them and ourselves with compassion, with curiosity, with the courage to ask, "How are you really?" and be willing to listen to the answer. Here's the turning point Krishnamurti offers. The end of anxiety isn't found in more happiness. It's found in truth. And truth begins when we stop running, stop covering, stop pretending. Can you sit in your room tonight without distraction, without reaching for your phone, without forcing a smile? Can you face the unease inside you without trying to fix it or escape it? If you can, even for a moment, you'll notice something powerful. The fear starts to soften. The anxiety begins to loosen its grip. Because what anxiety feeds on is resistance. The moment you stop resisting, you discover a stillness that no mask can give you. So perhaps the next time you see someone who looks perfectly happy, don't assume they're free. And the next time you feel the urge to cover your pain with a smile, pause. Ask yourself, what would happen if I let myself be real? That's the kind of question Krishnamurti would invite us to live with. Not to answer intellectually, not to solve with quick tips, but to hold as a living inquiry. Because the courage to be real might be the first step toward a life without anxiety, and maybe, just maybe, we'll discover that the most peaceful people aren't the ones who look the happiest. They're the ones who no longer need to look like anything at all. So in the end, the question is not about how to appear happy, but how to live honestly. The people who seem the brightest often struggle because they are trapped in an image. Real peace comes when we step out of that prison, when we allow ourselves to be seen exactly as we are, without fear, without disguise. That is not weakness, but the beginning of freedom. Krishnamurti reminded us that truth is simple. It asks for no performance. And in that truth, both happiness and sadness can exist without conflict. When we no longer hide, when we no longer chase an image, anxiety dissolves. What remains is clarity, compassion, and a quiet joy that needs no mask.